the new chemical light, drawn from the fountain of nature, and of manual experience, to which is added a treatise concerning sulfur. The author's anagram, Divi Leschi genus Anno. In this sentence, I love the divine race of Leschi. All the letters of the author's name are found transposed to WIT Michael Sendivogius. Preface. Upon all genuine seekers of the great chemical art, or sons of Hermes, the author implores the divine blessing and salvation. Underscore 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 underscore. When I considered in my mind the great number of deceitful books and forged alchemistic receipts, which have been put in circulation by heartless impostors, though they do not contain even a spark of truth, and how many persons have been and are still daily led astray by them, it occurred to me that I could not do better than communicate the talent committed to me by the Father of Lights to the sons and heirs of knowledge. I also wish to let posterity see that in our own age, as well as in ancient times, this singularly gracious philosophical blessing has not been denied to a few favored men. For certain reasons I do not think it advisable to publish my name. Chiefly, because I do not seek for praise for myself, but am only anxious to assist the lovers of philosophy. The vainglorious desire for fame I leave to those who are content to seem what they, in reality, are not. The facts and deductions which I have here briefly set down are transcribed from that manual, experience, graciously bestowed upon me by the Most High. And my object is to enable those who have laid a sound foundation in the elementary part of this most noble art, to advance to a more satisfying fullness of knowledge, and to put them on their guard against those depraved vendors of smoke, who delight in fraud and imposition. Our science is not a dream, as the vulgar crowd imagines, or the empty invention of idle men, as the foolish suppose. It is the very truth of philosophy itself, which the voice of conscience and of love bid me conceal no longer. In these wicked days, indeed, when virtue and vice are accounted alike, the ingratitude and unbelief of men keep our art from appearing openly before the public gaze. Yet this glorious truth is even now capable of being apprehended by learned and unlearned persons of virtuous lives, and there are many persons of all nations now living who have beheld Diana unveiled. But as many, either from ignorance or from a desire to conceal their knowledge, are daily teaching and inducing others to believe that the soul of gold can be extracted, and then imparted to other substances, and thereby entice numbers to incur great waste of time, labor, and money, let the sons of Hermes know for certain that the extracting of the essence of gold is a mere fond delusion, as those who persist in it will be taught to their cost by experience, the only arbitress from whose judgment seat there is no appeal. If, on the other hand, a person is able to transmute the smallest piece of metal, with or without gain, into genuine gold or silver which abides all the usual tests, he may justly be said to have opened the gates of nature, and cleared the way for profounder and more advanced study. It is with this object that I dedicate the following pages, which embody the results of my experience, to the sons of knowledge, that by a careful study of the working of nature they may be enabled to lift the veil, and enter her inmost sanctuary. To this final goal of our sacred philosophy they must travel by the royal road which nature herself has marked out for them. Let me therefore admonish the gentle reader that my meaning is to be apprehended not so much from the outward husk of my words, as from the inward spirit of nature. If this warning is neglected, he may spend his time, labor, and money in vain. Let him consider that this mystery is for wise men, and not for fools. The inward meaning of our philosophy will be unintelligible to vainglorious boasters, to conceited mockers, and to men who smother the clamorous voice of conscience with the insolence of a wicked life. As also to those ignorant persons who have fondly staked their happiness on albifactions and rubrifactions and other equally senseless methods. The right understanding of our art is by the gift of God, or by the ocular demonstration of a teacher, and can be attained only by diligent, humble search, and prayerful dependence on the giver of all good things. Now, God rejects those who hate him, and scorn knowledge. In conclusion, would earnestly ask the sons of knowledge to accept this book in the spirit in which it was written. And when the hidden has become manifest to them, and the inner gates of secret knowledge are flung open, not to reveal this mystery to any unworthy person. Also to remember their duty towards their suffering and distressed neighbors, to avoid any ostentatious display of their power. And above all, to render to God, the Three-in-One, sincere and grateful thanks with their lips, in the silence of their hearts. And by refraining from any abuse of the gift. Simplicity. is the seal of truth. As after the completion of the preface, it was found that it did not cover the whole of the space allotted to it, I have, at the publisher's request, there set down the Last Will and Testament of Arnold Villanovanus, which I once turned into Latin verse. I am conscious that the style of my versification is wanting in neatness and elegance, but this defect was partly caused by the necessity of adhering strictly and faithfully to the author's meaning. Testament of Arnold de Villanova. It is said that Arnold de Villanova, a man who was a credit to his race, signified his last will in the following words: "It has its birth in the earth, its strength it doth acquire in the fire. And there becomes the true stone of the ancient sages. Let it be nourished for twice 6 hours with a clear liquid until its limbs begin to expand and grow apace. Then let it be placed in a dry and moderately warm spot for another period of 12 hours, until it has purged itself by giving out a thick steam or vapor, and becomes solid and hard within. The virgin's milk that is expressed from the better part of the stone is then preserved in a carefully closed oval-shaped distilling vessel of glass, and is day by day wondrously changed by the quickening fire, until all the different colors resolve themselves into a fixed gentle splendor of a white radiance, which soon, under the continued genial influence of the fire, changes to a glorious purple. The outward and visible sign of the final perfection of your work. The first treatise of nature, what she is, and what manner of men her disciples ought to be. Many sages, scholars, and learned men have in all ages, and, according to Hermes, even so early as the days before the flood, written much concerning the preparation of the philosopher's stone. And if their books could be understood without a knowledge of the living processes of nature, one might almost say that they are calculated to supersede the study of the real world around us. But though they never departed from the simple ways of nature, they have something to teach us, which we, in these more sophisticated times, still need to learn. Because we have applied ourselves to what are regarded as the more advanced branches of knowledge, and despise the study of so simple a thing as natural generation. Hence we pay more heed to impossible things than to those objects which are broadly exhibited before our very eyes. We excel more in subtle speculations than in a sober study of nature, and of the meaning of the sages. It is one of the most remarkable features of human nature that we neglect those things which seem familiar, and are eager for new and strange information. The workman who has attained the highest degree of excellence in his art, neglects it, and applies himself to something else, or else abuses his knowledge. Our longing for an increase of knowledge urges us ever onward toward some final goal, in which we imagine that we shall find full rest and satisfaction, like the ant which is not endowed with wings till the last days of its life. In our time, the philosophical art has become a very subtle matter. It is the craft of the goldsmith compared with that of the humble workman who exercises his calling at the forge. We have made such mighty strides in advance that if the ancient masters of our science, Hermes and Geber and Raymond Lullius, were to rise from the dead, they would be treated by our modern alchemists, not as sages, but as only humble learners. They would seem very poor scholars in our modern lore of futile distillations, circulations, calcinations, and in all the other countless operations wherewith modern research has so famously enriched our art. Though without understanding the sense of the ancient writings. In all these respects, our learning is vastly superior to theirs. Only one thing is unfortunately wanting to us which they possessed, namely, the knack they had of actually preparing the philosopher's stone. Perhaps, then, their simple methods were after all the best, and it is on this supposition that I desire, in this volume, to teach you to understand nature, so that our vain imaginations may not misdirect us in the true and simple way. Nature, then, is one, true, simple, self-contained, created by God and informed with a certain universal spirit. Its end and origin are God. Its unity is also found in God, because God made all things. Nature is the one source of all things, nor is anything in the world outside nature, or contrary to nature. Nature is divided into 4 places, in which she brings forth all things that appear and that are in the shade. And according to the good or bad quality of the place she brings forth good or bad things. There are only 4 qualities which are in all things and yet do not agree among themselves, as one is always striving to obtain the mastery over the rest. Nature is not visible, though she acts visibly. She is a volatile spirit who manifests herself in material shapes, and her existence is in the will of God. It is most important for us to know her places, and those which are most in harmony, and most closely allied, in order that we may join things together according to nature, and not attempt to confound vegetables with animals, or animals with metals. Everything should be made to act on that which is like to it, and then nature will perform her duty. Students of nature should be such as is nature herself, true, simple, patient, constant, and so on. Above all, they should fear God, and love their neighbors. They should always be ready to learn from nature, and to be guided by her methods, ascertaining by visible and sensible examples whether that which they propose to perform is in accordance with her possibilities. If we would reproduce something already accomplished by nature, we must follow her, but if we would improve on her performance, we must know in and by what it is ameliorated. For instance, if we desire to impart to a metal greater excellence than nature has given to it, we must take the metallic substance both in its male and its female varieties, else all our efforts will be in vain. It is as impossible to produce a metal out of a plant, as to make a tree out of a dog or any other animal. Second Treatise. Concerning the operation of nature in our substance. And its seed. I have already said that nature is one, true, and consistent, and that she is known by her products, such as trees, herbs, etc. I have also described the qualifications of a student of nature. Now I will say a few words about the operation of nature. As nature has her being in the will of God, so her will, or seed, is in the elements. She is one, and produces different things, but only through the mediate instrumentality of seed. For nature performs whatsoever the sperm requires of her, and is, as it were, only the instrument of some artisan. The seed, if anything, is more useful to the artist than nature herself. For nature without seed, is what a goldsmith is without silver and gold, or a husbandman without seed corn. Wherever there is seed, nature will work through it, whether it be good or bad. Nature works on seed as God works on the free will of man. Truly it is a great marvel to behold nature obeying the seed, not because she is forced to do so, but of her own will. In like manner, God permits man to do what he pleases, not because he is constrained, but of his good and free bounty. The seed, then, is the elixir of anything, or its quintessence, or its most perfect digestion and decoction, or, again, the balm of sulfur, which is the same as the radical moisture in metals. We might say much more about this seed, but can only mention those facts which are of importance in our art. The 4 elements produce seed, through the will of God and the imagination of nature. And as the seed of the male animal has its center or storing place in the kidneys, so the 4 elements by their continual action project a constant supply of seed to the center of the earth, where it is digested. And whence it proceeds again in generative motions. Now the center of the earth is a certain void place wherein nothing is at rest, and upon the margin or circumference of this center the 4 elements project their qualities. As the male seed is emitted into the womb of the female, where only so much as is needed is retained while the rest is driven out again. So the magnetic force of our earth center attracts to itself as much as is needed of the cognate seminal substance, while that which cannot be used for vital generation is thrust forth in the shape of stones and other rubbish. This is the fountainhead of all things terrestrial. Let us illustrate the matter by supposing a glass of water to be set in the middle of a table, round the margin of which are placed little heaps of salt, and of powders of different colors. If the water be poured out, it will run all over the table in divergent rivulets, and will become salt where it touches the salt, red where it dissolves the red powder, and soon. The water does not change the places, but the several places differentiate the water. In the same way, the seed which is the product of the four elements is projected in all directions from the earth center, and produces different things, according to the quality of the different places. Thus, while the seed of all things is one, it is made to generate a great variety of things, just as the seed of a man might produce a man if projected into the womb of a female of his own species, or a monstrous variety of abortions, if projected into the wombs of different female animals. So long as nature's seed remains in the center, it can indifferently produce a tree or a metal, a herb or a stone, and in like manner, according to the purity of the place, it will produce what is less or more pure. But how do the elements generate the sperm or seed? There are four elements, two heavy and two light, two dry and two moist, but one driest and one moistest of all, and these are male and female. By God's will each of these is constantly striving to produce things like to itself in its own sphere. Moreover, they are constantly acting on one another, and the subtle essences of all are combined in the center, where they are well mixed and sent forth again by Archeus, the servant of nature. As is more fully set forth in the epilogue of these 12 treatises. Third Treatise. Concerning the true and first matter of metals. The first matter of metals is twofold, and one without the other cannot create a metal. The first and principal substance is the moisture of air mingled with warmth. This substance the sages have called mercury, and in the philosophical sea it is governed by the rays of the sun and the moon. The second substance is the dry heat of the earth, which is called sulfur. But as this substance has always been kept a great mystery, let us declare it more fully, and especially its weight, ignorance of which mars the whole work. The right substance, if the quantity of it which is taken be wrong, can produce nothing but an abortion. There are some who take the entire body for their matter, that is, for their seed or sperm. Others take only a part of it, both are on the wrong track. If any one, for instance, were to attempt the creation of a man out of a man's hand and a woman's foot, he would fail. For there is in every body a central atom, or vital point of the seed, its 1/8200 part, even in a grain of wheat. Neither the body nor the grain is all seed, but every body has a small seminal spark, which the other parts protect from all excess of heat and cold. If you have ears and eyes, treasure up this fact, and be on your guard against those who would use the whole grain as seed, and those who strive to produce a highly rarefied metallic substance by the vain solution and mixture of different metals. For even the purest metals contain a certain element of impurity, while in the inferior the proportion is greater. You will have all you want if you find the point of nature, which you must not, however, look for in the vulgar metals. It is not to be found therein, for all these, and common gold more especially, are dead. But the metals which we advise you to take are living and have vital spirits. Fire is the life of metals while they are still in their ore, and the fire of smelting is their death. But the first matter of metals is a certain moisture mixed with warm air. Its appearance is that of oily water adhering to all pure and impure things, yet in some places it is found more abundantly than in others, because the earth is more open and porous in one place than in another, and has a greater magnetic force. When it becomes manifest, it is clothed in a certain vesture, especially in places where it has nothing to cling to. It is known by the fact that it is composed of three principles. But, as a metallic substance, it is only one without any visible sign of conjunction, except that which may be called its vesture or shadow, namely, sulfur, etc. Fourth Treatise. How metals are produced in the bowels of the earth. The metals are produced in this way, after the four elements have projected their power and virtues to the center of the earth, they are, in the hands of the Archeus of nature, distilled and sublimed by the heat of perpetual motion towards the surface of the earth. For the earth is porous, and the air by distillation through the pores of the earth is resolved into a water, out of which all things are generated. You should know that the seed of metals is the same, in the first instance, as the sperm of all other things, viz., a vaporous moisture. Hence it is foolish to seek the dissolution of metals in the first matter, which is nothing but a vapor, and in so doing philosophers have not comprehended the first matter, but only the second, as Bernard Trevisan well argues. Though in a somewhat obscure manner, for he addressed himself to the sons of the doctrine. For my part, before openly explaining this theory, I would warn all men not to seek that which exists everywhere by itself in a soft volatile form by so many circulations, calcinations, and reiterations of hard gold and silver, which can never be changed back into their original substance. Let us follow the real meaning of the writers of alchemy whose works we read, and remember that if art would produce any solid and permanent effect, it must follow in the footsteps of nature, and be guided by her methods. It must trust itself to the guidance of nature as far as nature will lead, and go beyond her by still adhering to her rules. Now I said that all things are produced of a liquid air or a vapor, which the elements distill into the center of the earth by a continual motion, and that as soon as the Archeus has received it, his wisdom sublimes it through the pores, and distributes it to each place, producing different things according to the diverse places in which it is deposited. Some think that each metal has its own seed. But this is a great mistake, for there is only one seed. The sperm which appears in Saturn is the same as that which is found in gold, silver, copper, and their difference is caused by the place, and by the time during which nature was at work upon them, the procreation of silver being achieved sooner than that of gold, and so with the other metals. The vapor which is sublimed by heat from the center of the earth, passes either through cold or warm places. If the place be warm and pure, and contain adhering to it a certain fatness of sulfur, the vapor, or mercury of the sages, joins itself to its fatness, and sublimes it together with itself. If in the course of its further sublimation this unctuous vapor reaches other places where the earth has already been subtilized, purified, and rendered moist by previous ascending vapors, it fills the pores of this earth, and with it becomes gold. But if this unctuous moisture be carried to impure and cold places, it becomes lead. If the earth be pure and mingled with sulfur, it becomes copper. For the purer the place is, the more beautiful and perfect will the metal be. We must also note that the vapor is constantly ascending, and in its ascent from the earth's center to its superficies, it purifies the places through which it passes. Hence precious metals are found now where none existed 1,000 years ago, for this vapor, by its continual progress, ever subtilizes the crude and impure, and as continually carries away the pure with itself. This is the circulation and reiteration of nature. All places are being more and more purified, and the purer they become, the nobler are their products. In the winter this unctuous vapor is congealed by the frost. At the return of spring it is set free, and is the magnesia which attracts to itself the kindred mercury of the air, and gives life to all things through the rays of the sun, the moon, and the stars, thus bringing forth grass, flowers, and the like. For nature is never idle even during a single moment. This, then, is the only true account of the generation of metals. The earth is purged by a long distillation, and when the unctuous or fatty vapor approaches, the same are procreated, nor are they ever otherwise begotten. Notwithstanding the imaginations of those who misinterpret on this point the writings of the philosophers. Fifth Tract. On the generation of all kinds of stones. The substance of stones is the same as that of all other things, and their quality is determined by the purity of the places in which they arise. When the four elements distill their vapor to the center of the earth, the Archeus of nature expels and sublimes it in such a manner that it carries with it in its passage through the pores of the earth all the impurities of these places up to the surface, where they are congealed by the air, all that pure air engenders being congealed by crude air, their ingression being mutual, so that they join one with another, since nature rejoices in nature. Thus rocks and stones are gradually built up and generated. Now the larger the pores of the earth, the greater is the quantity of impurities carried upward. And thus the earth is most completely purified under those places where there is a great accumulation of stones or rocks at the surface, and in this manner the procreation of metals becomes easier in these places. This explains the fact that metals are scarcely ever found in plains, but nearly always in the bowels of rocky hills. The plains are often moist with elemental water which attracts to itself the rising vapor, and with it is digested by the rays of the sun into the rich clay which potters use. In places where the soil is gross, and the vapor contains neither unctuousness nor sulfur, it produces herbs and grass in the meadows. The precious stones, such as diamonds, rubies, and emeralds, chrysoprase, onyx, and carbuncle, are all generated in the same manner as ordinary stones. When the natural vapor is sublimed by itself without sulfur or the unctuosity of which we have spoken, and reaches a place where there is pure salt water, i.e., in very cold places, where our sulfur cannot exist, for could it exist, this effect would be hindered, diamonds are formed. The unctuous sulfur which rises with the vapor cannot move without warmth, and is instantly congealed, when it reaches a slightly cold place, leaving the vapor to continue its upward movement without it. Colors are imparted to precious stones in this way. When the unctuous sulfur is congealed by the perpetual motion, the spirit of the water digests it in passing and purifies it by the water of the salt, until it assumes a red or white color. This color is volatilized by so many repeated distillations, and at length is borne upward with the purifying vapor, which by its aid is able to enter imperfect bodies, and thus to pervade them with color. The color is united to the partly congealed water, and fills all its pores so that the two are absolutely one. For water which has no spirit is congealed by heat, and water which has a spirit is congealed by cold. But he who knows how to congeal water by means of heat, and to join to it a spirit, is like to discover something 1,000 times more precious than gold, or anything which is in the world. Let him separate the spirit from the water, in order that it may putrefy, and that the grain may appear. Then let him purge off the dross, and reduce the spirit to water. This union will produce a branch which bears little resemblance to the parent stem. Sixth Treatise. Concerning the second matter and putrefaction. We have spoken of the first matter of all things, and after what manner they are born by nature without seed, that is, after what manner nature receives the matter from the elements whereof she engenders seed. We will now consider this seed and the things evolved from it. Everything that has seed is multiplied thereby, but not without the aid of nature, for seed is nothing but congealed air, or a vaporous humor enclosed in a body. And unless it be dissolved by a warm vapor, it cannot work. Now, the nature of this seed which is produced out of the four elements, is threefold: it is either mineral, or vegetable, or animal. Mineral seed is known only to the sages. Vegetable seed is common and vulgar, as we see in fruits. Animal seed is known by imagination. But vegetable seed exhibits most clearly the process by which nature evolves natural objects out of the four elements. Winter is the cause of putrefaction, it congeals the vital spirit in trees. And when the heat of the sun, which magnetically attracts moisture, sets it free, the natural heat of the tree, which is thereby stirred up, drives a subtle vapor of water towards the surface, and makes the sap to flow. Always separating the pure from the impure, though the impure may sometimes precede the pure. That which is pure is congealed into flowers, the impure becomes leaves, the gross and thick hardens into bark. The bark of the tree remains fixed, the leaves fall when the pores are obstructed by heat or cold. The flowers receive a color according to the quality of the natural heat, and bear fruit or seed. We may instance the apple, wherein is the sperm, whence the tree does not spring. But in this sperm is the seed or grain interiorly, whence the tree is born even without sperm, for multiplication is not of the sperm but of the seed. Thus we see how nature, without our help, creates vegetable seed out of the four elements. But how about minerals? Nature brings forth mineral or metallic seed in the bowels of the earth. This is the reason why so many will not believe in its existence, because it is invisible. And on this account the vulgar unbelief is not so greatly to be wondered at, for if they hardly understand that which is openly before their eyes, how should they know anything about that which they cannot see? Yet, whether they believe it or not, the fact remains the same, and it is most true that that which is above is as that which is below, and that which is born above has origin from the same source which is at work down below. Even in the bowels of the earth. What prerogative have vegetables above metals that God should give seed to the one and withhold it from the other? Are not metals as much in his sight as trees? It is certain that nothing can grow without seed, for that which has no seed, is dead. The four elements must either bring forth metallic seed, or produce metals without seed. In the latter case, they cannot be perfect, for nothing is complete without seed. He who can bring himself to believe that metals are destitute of seed, is unworthy to understand the mysteries of our art. The metals then really contain their own proper seed, and it is generated in the following way. The vapor which, in the manner repeatedly described, rises from the earth's center, and is called mercury not on account of its essence but on account of its fluidity, and the facility with which it adheres to anything, is assimilated to the sulfur on account of its internal heat. And, after congelation, is the radical humor. Thus metals are indeed generated out of mercury. But those ignorant persons who say that this first substance of metals is ordinary mercury, confound the whole body with the seed that is in it, seeing that common mercury, too, contains metallic seed, as well as the other metals. Let us illustrate the matter by the analogy of the human body. Therein it is certain that there is a seed whereby the species of mankind is propagated. That body, which may be likened to common mercury, contains seed, which is not seen, and of which the quantity is very small in proportion to the size of the whole body. The process of generation is performed not by the whole body, but by this seminal, congealed watery vapor. But as no vital generation could take place if the body were dissected in order to get at the seed, as the murdering of the body would kill the seed, so ignorant alchemists may be said to murder the body and kill the seed of metals. When they dissolve their bodies, whether of gold, silver, or lead, and corrode them with aqua fortis, in order to obtain the metallic seed. All multiplication is performed by means of male and female seed, and the two, which by themselves are barren, must be conjoined in order to bring forth fruit, i.e., a new form. Whosoever, therefore, would bring forth any good thing must take the sperm or the seed, and not the entire body. Take, then, the living male and the living female, and join them in order that they may project a sperm for the procreation of a fruit according to their kind, for let no one presume to suppose that he can make the first matter. The first matter of man is earth, and there is no one so bold as to dream that he can create a man. God alone can perform this artifice. But if the second substance, or seed, which is already created, be put in the proper place, nature will produce a new form of the same species. The artist only separates what is subtle from its grosser elements, and puts it into the proper vessel. Nature does the rest. As a thing begins, so it ends. Out of one arise two, and out of two one, as of God the Father there was begotten God the Son, and from the two proceeded God the Holy Ghost. Thus was the world made, and so also shall it end. Consider carefully these few points, and you will find, firstly, the Father, then the Father and the Son, lastly, the Holy Spirit. You will find the four elements, the four luminaries, the two celestials, the two centrics. In a word, there is nothing, has been, and shall be nothing in the world which is otherwise than it appears in this symbol, and a volume might be filled with its mysteries. I say, therefore, it is the attribute of God alone to make one out of one. You must produce one thing out of two by natural generation. Know, then, that the multiplying sperm is the second substance, and not the first. For the first substance of things is not seen, but is hidden in nature or the elements. The second substance is occasionally seen by the children of knowledge. 7th Treatise. Concerning the virtue of the second matter. But in order that you may the better know this second matter, I will describe to you its virtues. Nature is divided into three kingdoms, the mineral, the vegetable, and the animal. It is manifest that the mineral kingdom could subsist of itself were there no vegetables or animals in the world. The vegetable, in like manner, is independent of the animal and mineral. These two kingdoms were created in independence. The animal kingdom alone depends for its subsistence on the two others, and is the most noble and excellent of all. And seeing that it is the last of the three, it governs the two others, because virtue expends itself at the third, even as it is multiplied in the second. In the vegetable kingdom the first substance is the herb or the tree, which you cannot create, but which is produced by nature alone. The second substance is the seed which you see, by which herbs and trees are propagated. In the animal kingdom the first substance is the beast or man, whom you cannot create, but the seed, or second substance, by which they are propagated, you know. In the mineral kingdom, too, you are unable to create a metal, and if you boast that you can do so, nature will laugh at your pretensions. Given even the possession of that first matter which is vaunted by the philosophers, namely, the centric salt, you cannot multiply it without gold, but the vegetable seed of metals is known only to the sons of science. In the case of plants, the seed is seen outwardly, and is digested by warm air. In animals the seed appears inwardly and outwardly, and is prepared in the kidneys of the male. Water is the seed of minerals, in the very center of their heart and life. And the kidneys of its digestion are fire. The receptacle of vegetable seed is the earth, the receptacle of animal seed the womb of the female, and air is the receptacle of water, the mineral seed. The receptacles of seed are the same as congelations of bodies, digestion is the same as solution, and putrefaction the same as destruction. The specific property of seed is to enter into union with other substances belonging to the same kingdom, because it is subtle, and, in fact, air congealed by fatness into water. It is recognizable by the fact that it does not become naturally united to anything outside the kingdom to which it belongs. It is not dissolved, but only congealed, as it does not need solution but only congelation. Hence it is necessary that the pores of bodies be open to admit the sperm, in the center of which lies the seed, which is air. When it enters its proper womb it is congealed, and congeals the pure or mixed substance which it finds. So long as there is any seed in the body lives, when it is all consumed the body dies, and any emission of seed weakens the body, as may be seen in the case of dissolute persons, and of trees which have been too richly laden with fruit. The seed, then, is invisible, but the sperm can be seen, and is even as a living soul, which is not found in dead things. It is extracted after two manners, of which the first is gentle and the second violent. Nothing is produced without seed, but everything comes into being by means of seed. Let all sons of knowledge remember that seed is vainly sought in dry trees, and that it is found only in those which are green. 8th Treatise. How Nature Operates Through Our Art in the Seed. Seed in itself produces no fruit, if it be not placed by nature or art in its own proper womb. Though seed in itself is the most glorious of all created things, yet the womb is its life, which causes the putrefaction of the enclosing grain or sperm, brings about the congelation of the vital atom, nourishing and stimulating its growth by the warmth of its own body. All this is constantly and regularly being enacted, by months, years, and seasons, in the above said three natural kingdoms. The process can be hastened artificially in the vegetable and mineral, but not in the animal world. In the mineral kingdom, art can do something which nature is unable to perform, by removing the crude air which stops up the outward pores of minerals, not in the bowels of the earth but in the circumference. The elements vie in projecting their seed into the center of the earth in order that it may there be digested. The center, by a caloric movement, emits it into the womb. Of these wombs there are an untold number, as many as there are places, and one place always purer than another. Know that a pure womb will bring forth a pure form of its own species. For instance, as among animals there are wombs of women, cows, mares, bitches, so in the mineral world there are metals, stones, and salts. Now salts principally demand consideration, with their localities, according as they are less or more important. 9th Treatise. On the Commixtion of Metals, and the Eliciting of the Metallic Seed. We have spoken hitherto of nature, of art, of bodies, sperm, and seed. Let us now proceed to the practical inquiry, how metals should be mixed, and how they are mutually related. For, as a woman is generated in the same womb, and out of the same seed as a man, and the only difference is in the degree of digestion, and the purity of the blood and salts, so silver is produced from the same seed, and in the same womb as gold. But the womb of the silver had more water, and, as it were, less digested blood than that of gold, according to the times of the celestial moon. But if you would understand the sexual union of the metals, and their manner of emitting and receiving seed, look at the celestial bodies of the planets. You will see that Saturn is higher than all the rest, to whom Jupiter succeeds, then Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, while the last place is occupied by the Moon. The virtues of the planets descend, but do not ascend. And so as experiences teaches us, Mars is easily converted into Venus, but not Venus into Mars, which has an inferior sphere. Also Jupiter may be quickly transmuted into Mercury, because Jupiter has a higher place. The one is second after the firmament, the other second after the earth. Saturn is the highest, the Moon lowest, the Sun combines with all, but is never ameliorated by its inferiors. There is a great correspondence between Saturn and the Moon, the Sun being medial between them, as also between Mercury and Jupiter, Mars and Venus, which all have the Sun as their center. Most operators know how to transmute iron into copper, or Venus, without using gold. They also know how to change Jupiter into Mercury. Some can prepare the Moon, silver, out of Saturn. But if they could prepare gold by these changes, their secret would be worth knowing indeed. For this reason I repeat that it is important to know the mutual correspondence of metals, and their possibilities of union. There is one metal which has power to consume all others, for it is, so to speak, their water, and almost their mother, and is resisted only by the radical humor of gold and silver, and ameliorated by it. This metal is called calebs, steel. If gold is united to it 11 times, and emits its seed, it is weakened even unto death, but the calebs, steel, conceives and brings forth a son much nobler than the father. And when the seed of the Sun is placed in her womb, it purifies it, and renders it 1,000 times better fitted to produce excellent fruit. There is another calebs, steel, which is like this one, and created as a thing by itself by nature. This steel is able, with its wonderful virtue, to elicit from the rays of the Sun that which so many have sought, and which is the chief principle of our art. 10th Treatise. On the supernatural generation of the Son of the Sun. We have treated of those things which are produced by nature and have been created by God, so that those who are searchers of this science may comprehend more easily the possibility of nature, and the utmost limit of her powers. I now go on to speak about the method of preparing the philosopher's stone. The stone or tincture is nothing other than gold digested to the highest degree. Common gold resembles a plant without seed. But when such a plant is matured, it produces seed, and so, when gold is ripened, it produces its seed, or the tincture. If anyone asks why gold and other metals do not commonly produce seed, I answer, because the crudity of the ore, which has not sufficient heat, prevents it from being matured. In some places pure gold is found which nature has been striving to mature, but which has not attained to ripeness on account of the crudity of the air. An analogous case is that of the orange tree, which bears no fruit in northern latitudes, because it has not sufficient warmth, while in warmer countries it ripens the most delicious fruit. And a like result it is possible to produce in colder countries, by means of artificial heat. The same thing happens with metallic natures, and so gold may be made to produce seed, by a wise and judicious artist who knows how to assist nature. Should he act independently of nature, he would err, for in this science, as in all others, we can do nothing but supplement nature, nor can we otherwise aid her than through the agency of heat or fire. Now, in order that nature may be enabled to work upon a congealed metallic substance, wherein the spirit does not appear, the body must be dissolved and its pores opened. Now, there are two kinds of solution, the violent and the natural. And under the former head come all those methods of solution which are in vogue among the vulgar herd of modern alchemists, and the same are cold and useless. Natural solution takes place when the pores of the body are gently opened in our water, so that the digested seed can be emitted and placed in its womb. Our water is a water which does not wet the hands. It is a heavenly water, and yet not rain water. The body is gold which gives out the seed. Our silver, not common silver, is that which conceives the seed of the gold. There it is digested by our continual fire, for 7 or even 10 months, until our water consumes 3, and leaves 1, and this is something twofold. Then it is nourished with the milk of earth, or the fatness of that which is formed in the breasts of the earth, and is regulated and conserved by the putrefaction of the surrounding substance. In this way that infant of the second generation is born. Now let us advance from theory to practice. 11th Treatise. Concerning the practical preparation of our stone or tincture. By means of our art. Our discourse in preceding chapters has been enlarged by appropriate examples which will facilitate the understanding of the practice, which, in accordance with natural procedure, must be performed as follows. Take 11 grains of our earth. Buy as many doses, 1 grain of our gold, and 2 grains of our silver. Here you should carefully bear in mind that common gold and silver are of no use for our purpose, as they are dead. Those which I ask you to take are the living metals. Expose them to the heat of our fire, and there will come out of them a dry liquid. The earth will first be dissolved into a water, which is called mercury of the sages, and this water will dissolve the bodies of the gold and silver, and consume them, till only the 10th part with 1 part remains. Which is the radical metallic humor. Then take the water of saltpetre from our earth, in which is a living river and a flowing wave. Let this water be clear, and pour on it the radical humor. Expose the whole to the fire of putrefaction and generation, which is not the same as that of the first operation. Regulate the heat judiciously, until there appear colors like those of the peacock's tail, and then continue to apply this well-regulated heat until the colors resolve themselves into a pronounced green. Be not weary, but continue till the rest of the colors have manifested. When you observe at the bottom ashes of a brown color, while the water is almost red, you should open the vessel and dip a feather into it. With this feather smear a morsel of iron, and if it becomes tinged, pour into the vessel as much of a certain water, which we will describe hereafter, as there is of crude air which has entered in. And then again subject it to coction over the same fire, until it colors the feather again. Further than this my experience does not go. The water I have mentioned is the menstruum of the world, from the sphere of the moon, and so carefully rectified that it has power to calcine the sun. Herein have I desired to discourse everything to your understanding, and if sometimes you will take my meaning rather than my words, you will find that I have revealed all, more especially as regards the first and second work. It remains for me to say a few words about the fire. In the first operation the fire should be of 1 degree and continuous, and should pervade the whole substance with an even warmth. In the second operation we need a natural fire, which digests and fixes the substance. Behold, I say unto you the truth. I have unfolded the regimen of the fire, if only you understand nature. But it is needful also to speak a few words concerning the vessel, which ought to be such as is indicated by nature, and 2 of these vessels suffice. In the first operation, the vessel should be round, in the second it should be somewhat smaller. It should also be of glass, in the form of a vial or egg. But know, above all things, that the fire employed by nature is one, and its differences are determined by differences of distance. The vessel of nature is also one, but we use 2 in order to accelerate the development of our substance. Its material is one, but consists of 2 substances. If you would produce anything, look at the things that are produced. If you cannot understand those which are continually before your eyes, it will go hardly with you when you seek to produce those which are as yet unseen. Remember that God alone can create. But he has permitted the sage to make manifest things that are hidden and concealed, according to the ministry of nature. Consider, I pray you, the simple water of the clouds. Who would believe that it contains in itself all mundane objects, hard stones, salts, air, earth, and fire? What shall I say of the earth, which seems simple enough, and yet contains water, fire, salts, air, and much besides? O, admirable nature, who knowest by the means of water how to produce the wonderful fruits of earth, who dost give life to them and nourish them by means of air. Everything depends upon the faculty of seeing which we bring to the study of nature. Common eyes, for instance, discern that the sun is hot, the eyes of the sage see that the sun itself is cold, and that it is only its movements which produce heat, for its effect is felt at so great a distance in space. The heat of the sun is the same as our natural fire, for as the sun is the center of the planets, and then scatters its heat downward in all directions, so in the center of the earth there is a sun of the earth, which by its perpetual motion drives heat or rays upward towards the surface of the earth. This inward heat is much more powerful than elemental fire, but it is tempered and cooled by the water which pervades and refreshes the pores of the earth, otherwise all things would be consumed by its fierceness. In the same way, the fierce rays of the sun are tempered and assuaged by the air of the intermediate atmosphere, without which everything would be consumed, and no generation would be possible. But I must now proceed to explain after what manner the elements act upon each other. In the center of the earth, then, there is a central sun, of which the heat pervades the whole earth to its surface by reason of the movement thereof, or by the motion of the firmament thereof. This heat changes the water of the earth into air, or vapor, which being much more subtle than water, is violently driven upward through the pores of the earth. But when it reaches the colder atmosphere it is once more condensed into water. And in some places we do indeed see this water, or condensed air, driven high up into the air by the force of the central fire, just as a kettle of water when exposed to gentle heat sends upward a gentle stream of vapor and air, while the steam thickens and the upward movement becomes more intense when the fire is kindled into a blaze. By this action of the central sun, the elements are distributed over the earth, and each finds the place where it can grow. This upward current of air is not always noticeable, because in many places there is not enough water to make it perceptible. An empty kettle gives out no steam. I say, then, that fire or heat is the cause of the motion of the air, and the life of all things, and the earth is their nurse or receptacle. If our earth and air were not cooled by water, the earth would be parched up, as it is even now in some places where the pores of the earth are closed up, and by obstructing the movement of the water would be placed at the mercy of the two kinds of solar heat. In this way the destruction of the world will one day be brought about. Now in our art you should closely imitate these natural processes. There should be the central heat, the change of the water into air, the driving upward of the air, its diffusion through the pores of the earth, its reappearance as condensed but volatilized water. Then you must give our ancient one gold and silver to swallow and consume, till he himself is burnt to death, and his ashes are scattered into the water, which you must then subject to coction for a sufficient space of time. The result will be the medicine which is a cure for leprosy. But be careful not to take heat for cold, or cold for heat. Mix only things which are like each other, and separate contrary elements by means of heat. If you do not follow the guidance of nature all your efforts will be in vain. I swear by God that I have spoken to you as a father should to his son. He that hath ears, let him hear, and he that bath sense, let him understand. 12th Treatise. Concerning the Stone and its Virtue. We have spoken sufficiently in preceding chapters concerning the production of natural things, the elements, the first and second matters, bodies and seeds, as also of their use and virtue. I have written also of the philosophical stone, and shall now speak of its virtue, in so far as experience has discovered it to me. Before, however, I proceed to describe the virtues of the stone, I will, for the better understanding of our art, once more recapitulate what has already been said. If anyone doubts the reality of our art, he should read the books of those ancient sages whose good faith no one ever yet called in question, and whose right to speak on this subject cannot be challenged. If you will not believe them, I am not so foolish as to enter into a controversy with one who denies first principles. The deaf and dumb cannot speak. Why minerals alone should be excluded from God's primal benediction, when he bade all things increase and multiply after their kind, I am unable to see, and if minerals have seed they have it for the purpose of generic propagation. The art of alchemy is true in its nature. Nature is true also, but a true artist is rarely found. Nature is one, our art is one, but the workmen are many. Nature, then, generates things through the will of God out of the first matter, the product of the elements, which is known to God alone. Nature produces things, and multiplies them out of the second substance, which is known to the sages. All elements are mutually dependent, though they do not agree when joined, but the queen of all is water, because it is the mother of all things and over it broods the spirit of fire. When fire acts on water, and strives with it, the first matter is evolved. Thus arise vapors of sufficient denseness to combine with earth, by means of that crude air which from the very beginning was separated from it. This process is going on ceaselessly, by means of perpetual motion. For motion causes heat, as you may know by continued friction of any substance. Motion causes heat, heat moves the water. The motion of water produces air, which is the life of all living things. Thus all things grow out of water, out of its more subtle vapors are produced light and subtle things, out of its oil, things of greater weight. Out of its salt things far more beautiful and precious than the rest. But as nature is often hindered by the impurity of this vapor, fatness, and salt, from producing perfection, experience has taught us to separate the pure from the impure. Therefore, if you would ameliorate nature, and produce a more perfect and elaborated subject, purge the body by dissolution of all that is heterogeneous, arid unite the pure to the pure, the well-digested to the well-digested. And the crude to the crude, according to the natural and not the material weight. For you must know that the central saltpetre never contains more earth than is required, whether it be otherwise pure or impure. But it is different with the fatness of the water, which is never found pure. Art purges it by the action of twofold heat, and then again combines its elements. Epilogue. Or conclusion of these 12 treatises. I have composed, O friendly reader, the preceding 12 treatises for the benefit of the students of this art. In order that they might understand the operations of nature, and after what manner she produces all things which are in the world, before they put their hands to any experiment. Otherwise, they might be trying to open the gate without a key, or to draw water with a sieve. For in regard to our holy and blessed art, he for whom the sun shines not, walks in thick darkness, and he who does not see the light of the moon, is involved in the shades of night. Nature has her own light, which is not visible to the outward eye. The shadow of nature upon our eyes is the body. But where the light of nature irradiates the mind, this mist is cleared away from the eyes, all difficulties are overcome, and things are seen in their very essence, namely, the inmost heart of our magnesia, which corresponds to the respective centers of the sun and earth. The bodily nature of things is a concealing outward vesture. If you dressed a boy and a girl of 12 years of age in exactly the same way, you would be puzzled to tell which was the boy and which the girl, but when the clothes are removed they may easily be distinguished. In the same way, our understanding makes a shadow to the shadow of nature, for our human nature is concealed by the body in the same way as the body by the clothes. I might in this place discourse fully and philosophically of the dignity of man, of his creation and generation, but I will pass over these themes and touch briefly on his life alone. Man is made of earth, and lives through air. For air contains the hidden food of life, of which the invisible spirit, when congealed, is better than the whole world. Truly wonderful and admirable are the ways of nature, who shews to us day by day the light of truth. I have set down in these 12 treatises that which she has revealed to me in order that the God-fearing reader may more easily understand that which I have seen with my eyes, that which my hands have performed, without any fraud or sophistication. For without the light and knowledge of nature it is impossible to attain to the perfection of this art, unless it be revealed to a man by the Spirit, or secretly by a loving friend. The substance is vile and yet most precious. Take 10 parts of our air, 1 part of living gold or living silver, put all this into your vessel, subject the air to coction, until it becomes first water, and then something which is not water. If you do not know how to do this, and how to cook air, you will go wrong, for herein is the true matter of the philosophers. You must take that which is, but is not seen until the operator pleases. This is the water of our dew, which is extracted from the saltpetre of the sages, by which all things grow, exist, and are nourished, whose womb is the center of the celestial and terrestrial sun and moon. To speak more openly, it is our magnet, which I have already called our calebs, or steel. Air generates this magnet, the magnet engenders or manifests our air. Thus Hermes says that its father is the sun, its mother the moon, and that the winds have fostered it in their womb, that is to say, the salt alkali, called by the sages salt of ammonia, or vegetable salt, is hidden in the womb of magnesia. The operation thereof is as follows: you dissolve condensed air, and in it a 10th part of gold. Seal it up, and expose it to our fire, until the air is changed into powder, and there will be seen, given the salt of the world, a great variety of colors. The rest of this process and the method of multiplication you will find fully set forth in the writings of Lullius, and other of the ancient sages, so therefore I do not dwell on them, being content to treat only of the first and second matters. This I have done frankly, and with open heart. Think not that any man in this world has spoken more fully and clearly than I have. I have not learned what I tell you from books, but by the experiment of my own hands. If you do not understand it at first, or are unable to accept the truth, accuse not my work, but blame rather yourself, believing that God will not reveal this secret unto you. Take it, then, in all earnestness, read and again read it, especially the epilogue of these 12 treatises, and diligently consider the possibilities of nature, the action of the elements, and which is chief among them. Especially in the rarefaction of air or water, by which the heavens and the whole world were created. This I admonish you to do, as a father admonishes a son. Do not wonder that I have written so many treatises. I am not in need of books for myself, but was impelled to record my experience by pity towards those who are wandering astray in the darkness of their own conceits. And though I might have set forth this secret in few words, I have written at great length in order to equip you with that knowledge of nature, without which you could not hope to succeed in this art. Do not be put out by the seeming contradictions with which, in accordance with the custom of the sages, I have had to conceal my real meaning a little. There is no rose found without thorns. Revolve diligently in your mind all that I have said about the way in which the elements distill the radical moisture to the center of the earth, and how the terrestrial and centric sun again raises and sublimes them, by its continual motion, to the surface of the earth. Note also the correspondence which has been affirmed between the celestial and the centric sun, for the celestial sun and moon have a special power and a wonderful virtue in distilling upon earth by their rays. For heat is easily united to heat, and salt to salt. As the central sun has its sea and crude perceptible water, so the celestial sun has its sea of subtle and imperceptible water, the atmosphere. On the surface of the earth the two kinds of rays meet and produce flowers and all things. Then rain receives its vital force out of the air, and unites it to that of the saltpetre of the earth. For the saltpetre of the earth is like calcined tartar, and by its dryness, attracts air to itself, which air it dissolves into water. For this saltpetre itself was once air, and has become joined to the fatness of the earth. The more abundantly the rays of the sun descend, the greater is the quantity of saltpetre generated, and so also is the harvest on earth increased. All this does experience daily teach. I have willed thus to set forth solely for the benefit of the ignorant the correspondences which exist between all things, and the efficacious virtue of the sun, moon, and stars. The wise have no need of such instruction. Our substance is openly displayed before the eyes of all, and yet is not known. Oh, how marvelous is our heaven, and our water, and our mercury, and our saltpetre which are in the world sea, and our vegetable, and our fixed and volatile sulfur, and our dead head, or dregs of our sea, and our water that does not wet the hands. And without which no mortal can live, without which nothing is born or generated in the whole world. It is lightly esteemed by men, yet no one can do without it, for it is more precious than all the world beside, and, in short, it is nothing but our pontic water which is congealed in the sun and moon and extracted from the sun and moon. By means of our calebs, steel, through the skill of the sages by a philosophical artifice and in a surprising manner. I did not really intend to publish this book, for reasons that are named in the preface, but my love for earnest students of this art got the better of my caution. So have I sought to make known my goodwill to those who know me, and manifest unto the initiated that I am their companion and equal, and that I desire their acquaintance. I doubt not that there are many persons of good conduct and clear conscience who possess this great gift of God in secret. I pray and conjure them that they should preserve even the silence of Harpocrates. Let them be made wise by my example, and take warning from my dangers. Whenever I have revealed myself to the great, it has always been to my peril and loss. But by this work I now shew myself to the sons of Hermes, while at the same time I instruct the ignorant, and direct lost seekers into the right path. Let them know that the secret is here as plainly expounded as it ever will be. I have kept nothing back except the secret of extracting our salt of ammonia, or mercury of the sages, out of our sea water, and the great use to which it is put. If I have not expressed myself very plainly on these points, it is only because I may not do so. The secret can only be revealed by God, who knows men's hearts and minds, and he will vouchsafe this knowledge, in answer to earnest and importunate prayer, after a repeated careful perusal of this book. The vessel, as I have said, is one, or two at most will suffice, and if you have knowledge of nature, a continuous fire, and the right substance, you ought to succeed. Let me caution you, in conclusion, not to be led astray by those who waste their time and money on herbs, animals, stones, and all kinds of minerals but the right ones. Farewell, good reader, and may you long enjoy the results of my labors, to the glory of God, the salvation of your soul, and the good of your neighbor. A Preface. To the Riddle of the Sages. Addressed to the Sons of Truth. Though I have already given unto you, O children of science, a full and exhaustive account of our art, and of the source of the universal fountain, so that there seems no further call to say anything, having, in the preceding treatises, illustrated the mode of nature by examples, and declared both the theory and the practice, so far as it is permitted me to do, yet there may be some of my readers who think that I have expressed myself here and there in too laconical a fashion. I will therefore once more make known, from beginning to end, the entire process, but in the form of a philosophical enigma, so that you may judge how far I have been permitted to attain by God. There is an infinite number of books which treat of this art, but you will scarce find any which contain a more clear explication of the truth than is here set down. I have, in the course of my life, met with a good many who fancied that they had a perfect understanding of the writings of the sages. But their subtle style of interpretation was in glaring contrast with the simplicity of nature, and they laughed at what they were pleased to call the rustic crudeness of my remarks. I have also frequently attempted to explain our art to others by word of mouth, but though they called themselves sages, they would not believe that there is such water in our sea, and attributed my remarks to temporary insanity. For this reason I am not afraid that my writings will reveal anything to unworthy persons, as I am persuaded that it is only by the gift of God that this art can be understood. If, indeed, subtlety and mental acuteness were all that is necessary for its apprehension, I have met with many strong minds, well fitted for the investigation of such subjects. But I tell you, be simple, and not overwise, until you have found the secret. Then you will be obliged to be prudent, and you will easily be able to compose any number of books, which is doubtless more simple for him who is in the center and beholds the thing itself, than one who is on the circumference only, and can only go by hearsay. You have a clear description of the matter of all things, but I warn you that if you would attain to this knowledge you should continue in earnest prayer to God, and love your neighbor. In the second place, you should not be ready to imagine all manner of subtleties and refinements of which nature knows nothing. Remain rather in the way of her simplicity, for therein you are far more likely to put your finger on the subject than if you abide in the midst of subtleties. In reading my book, do not stick too closely to the letter of my words, but read them side by side with the natural facts which they describe. You should also from the first fix your eyes steadily on the object of your search, and the scope and aim of our work. It is much wiser to learn with your mind and your brain first than by bitter experience afterwards. The object of your search should be to find a hidden thing from which, by a marvelous artifice, there is obtained a liquid by whose means gold is dissolved as gently and naturally as ice is melted in warm water. If you can find this substance, you have that out of which nature produced gold, and though all metals and all things are derived from it, yet it takes most kindly to gold. For all other things are clogged with impurity, except gold wherein there is no uncleanness, whence in a special manner this matter is, as it were, the mother of gold. If you will not follow my instructions, and be warned by my cautions, you can derive no benefit from my book. I have spoken as plainly as my conscience would permit. If you ask who I am a cosmopolitan. If you know me, and wish to be good and honorable men, keep my name a secret. If you do not know me, forbear to inquire after my name, for I shall make public nothing more than appears in this writing. Believe me, if my rank and station were not what they are, I should enjoy nothing so much as a solitary life, or to have joined Diogenes in his tub. For I behold this world full of vanity, greed, cruelty, venality, and iniquity. And I rejoice in the prospect of the glorious life to come. I no longer wonder, as once I did, that the true sage, though he owns the stone, does not care to prolong his life. For he daily sees heaven before his eyes, as you see your face in a glass. When God gives you what you desire, you will believe me, and not make yourself known to the world. A parable. Or Enigma of the Sages. Added by way of an appendix. Once upon a time, when I had been for many years of my life sailing from the Arctic to the Antarctic Pole, I was cast ashore by the will of God, on the coast of a certain great ocean. And though I was well acquainted with the properties of that sea, I did not know whether there was generated near those shores that little fish Aeneas, which is so anxiously sought, even unto this present, by men of high and low degree. But as I watched the naiads and nymphs disporting themselves in the water, being fatigued with my previous toils, and overwhelmed by the multitude of my thoughts, I was lulled asleep by the soft murmur of the waves. And as I slept sweetly and gently, I beheld a marvelous vision. I saw ancient Neptune, with a trident in his hand, rise, with venerable aspect, from our sea, who after a friendly salutation, carried me to a most beautiful island. This island was situated in the southern hemisphere, and contained all that is required for man's use and delight. It appeared a more pleasant and delightful abode than Virgil's Elysian fields. The shores thereof were fringed with verdant myrtles and cypresses. The meadows were studded with a large variety of beautiful and fragrant flowers. The slopes of the hills were clad with vines, olives, and cedars. The roads were overhung by the intertwining branches of laurels and pomegranate trees, which afforded grateful shade to the wayfarer. The plains were covered with groves of orange and lemon trees. In short, the island was an epitome of earthly beauty. Concealed under a rock, Neptune shewed me two minerals of that island, gold and calebs, steel. Then I was conducted to an orchard in the middle of a meadow, which was at no great distance, the same being planted with a great variety of beautiful trees. Among these he shewed me 7 enriched by particular names. And 2 of them towered above the rest. One bore fruit which shone like the sun, and its leaves resembled gold, the fruit of the other was whiter than lilies, and its leaves were like fine silver. Neptune called the first the solar, and the second the lunar tree. The only thing which it was difficult to obtain in the island, was water. The inhabitants had tried to get it from a spring by means of a conduit, and to elicit it from many things. But the result was a poisonous water, and the only water that could be drunk was that condensed out of the rays of the sun and moon. The worst of it was, that no one could attract more than 10 parts of this water. It was wonderful water, I can tell you, for I saw with my eyes, and touched with my hands its dazzling whiteness, which surpassed all the splendor of the snow. While I stood wrapped in admiration, Neptune vanished from my sight, and there stood before me a tall man, on whose forehead the name of Saturn was inscribed. He took a vessel, and scooped up 10 parts of the water, in which he placed fruit from the solar tree, and the fruit was consumed like ice in warm water. So I said unto him, Lord, I behold here a marvelous thing. This water is small in quantity. Nevertheless, the fruit of this tree is consumed therein by a gentle heat. To what purpose is all this? He graciously replied, My son, it is true that this thing is wonderful. But this water is the water of life, and has such power to exalt the qualities of this fruit, that it shall afterwards, without sowing or planting, only by its fragrance, transmute the 6 trees which remain into its own nature. Moreover, this water is as a woman to the fruits of this tree can putrefy nowhere but in this water. And though the fruit by itself be wonderful and precious, yet when it putrefies in this water, it brings forth out of this putrefaction a salamander that endures the fire. Its blood is more precious than all treasures, and has power to render fertile 6 trees such as you see here, and to make their fruit sweeter than honey. Then I said unto him, Lord, how is this thing done? He replied, I have already told thee that the fruits of the solar tree are living, and they are sweet, but whereas the fruit while it is cooked in this water can inform but 1 part, after its coction has been completed it can inform 1,000. I then inquired whether the fruit was boiled in this water over a fierce fire, and how long. He answered, This water has an inward fire, and when this is assisted by continuous outward warmth, it burns up 3 parts of its own body with this body of the fruit, until nothing but an incredibly small part remains, which, however, possesses the most marvelous virtue. This is cooked by the wise master first for 7 months, and then for 10. But in the meantime, on each 50th day, a variety of phenomena is witnessed. Again I besought him whether this fruit was cooked in several waters, and whether anything was added to it. He made answer, There is no water either in this island or in the whole country, but only this kind alone that can properly penetrate the pores of this fruit. And you should know the solar tree also grew out of this water, which is collected by magnetic attraction out of the rays of the sun and moon. Hence the fruit and the water exhibit a wonderful sympathy and correspondence. If any foreign substance were added to the water, its virtue would only be impaired. Hence nothing should be put into the water but this fruit. After its decoction the fruit has life and blood, and its blood causes all barren trees to bring forth the same precious fruit. I asked whether the water was obtained by any secret process, or whether it was to be obtained everywhere. He said, It is found everywhere, and no one can live without it, but it is best when extracted by means of archalibs, steel, which is found in the belly of the ram. If you ask what is its use, I answer that before the due amount of coction has been performed, it is deadly poison, but afterwards it is the great medicine, and yields 29 grains of blood, each one of which produces 864 of the fruits of the solar tree. I asked whether it could be still further improved. The sages say, he returned, that it can be increased first to 10, then to 100, then to 1,000, then to 10,000 times its own quantity, and so on. I asked whether that water was known by any particular name. He cried aloud, saying, Few know it, but all have seen it, and see and love it. It has many names, but we call it the water of our sea, the water that does not with the hands. Do they use it for any other purpose? I inquired, and is anything born in it? Every created thing, he replied, uses it, but invisibly. All things owe their birth to it, and live in it. Nothing is, properly speaking, in it, though itself mingles with all things. It can be improved by nothing but the fruit of the solar tree, without which it is of no use in this work. I was going to ask him to speak more plainly, when he began to cry out in such a loud voice that I awoke out of my sleep, and Saturn and the hope of getting my questions answered vanished together. Be contented, nevertheless, with what I have told you, and be sure that it is impossible to speak more clearly. If you do not understand what I have said, you will never grasp the writings of other philosophers. After a while, I fell into another deep sleep, in which I saw Neptune standing over me, congratulating me on our happy meeting in the garden of the Hesperides. He held up to me a mirror, in which I saw the whole of nature unveiled. After we had exchanged a few remarks, I thanked him for conducting me to this beautiful garden, and introducing me to the company of Saturn, and I heartily besought him to resolve for me the difficulties and doubts which Saturn had left uncleared. For instance, I said, I have read and believe that for every act of generation a male and a female are required, and yet Saturn spoke of generation by placing the solar fruit in the water, or mercury of the sages. What did he mean? As the Lord of the Sea, I know that you are acquainted with these things, and I entreat of you to answer me. He said, What you say about the act of generation is true. And yet you know that worms are produced in a different way from quadrupeds, namely by putrefaction, and the place or earth in which this putrefaction occurs is feminine. In our substance the mother is the water of which so much has been said, and its offspring is produced by putrefaction, after the manner of worms. Hence the sages call it the phoenix and salamander. Its generation is a resurrection rather than a birth, and for this reason it is immortal or indestructible. Now, whatsoever is conceived of two bodies is subject to the law of death. But the life of this fruit is a separation from all that is corruptible about it. It is the same with the phoenix, which separates of itself from its corruptible body. I inquired whether the substance was compound in its nature. No, he said, there is only the solar fruit that is put into the water, which must be to the fruit in the proportion of 10 to 1. Believe that what was here revealed to you in a dream by Saturn, after the manner of our island, is not a dream, but a bright reality which will stand the test of broad daylight. With these words he abruptly left me, without listening to my further questions, and I awoke and found myself at home in Europe. May God shew to you, gentle reader, the full interpretation of my dreams. Farewell. To the triune God be praise and glory. A dialogue between Mercury, the alchemist, and nature. On a certain bright morning a number of alchemists met together in a meadow, and consulted as to the best way of preparing the philosopher's stone. It was arranged that they should speak in order, and each after the manner that seemed best to him. Most of them agreed that mercury was the first substance. Others said, no, it was sulfur, or something else. These alchemists had read the books of the sages, and hence there was a decided majority in favor of mercury, not only as the true first matter, but in particular as the first matter of metals. Since all the philosophers seemed to cry with one voice, "O our mercury," etc. Whatever that word might mean. Just as the dispute began to run high, there arose a violent wind, which dispersed the alchemists into all the different countries of the world, and as they had arrived at no conclusion, each one went on seeking the philosopher's stone in his own old way, this one expecting to find it in one substance, and that in another, so that the search has continued without intermission even unto this day. One of them, however, had at least got the idea into his head that mercury was the substance of the stone, and determined to concentrate all his efforts on the chemical preparation of mercury, saying to himself, for this kind of discourse is very common among alchemists, that the assembly had determined nothing, and that the dispute would end only with the confection of the stone. So he began reading the works of the philosophers, and among others that of Alanus on mercury, whereby he became a philosopher indeed, but not one who had reached any practical conclusion. Then he took, common, mercury, and began to work with it. He placed it in a glass vessel over the fire, where it, of course, evaporated. So in his ignorance he struck his wife and said, "No one but you has entered my laboratory, you must have taken my mercury out of the vessel." The woman, with tears, protested her innocence. The alchemist put some more mercury into the vessel, and kept close and jealous watch over it, expecting that his wife would once more make away with it. The mercury rose to the top of the vessel in vaporous steam. Then the alchemist was full of joy, because he remembered that the first substance of the stone is described by the sages as volatile. And he thought that now at last he must be on the right track. He now began to subject the mercury to all sorts of chemical processes, to sublime it, and to calcine it with all manner of things, with salts, sulfur, metals, minerals, blood, hair, aqua fortis, herbs, urine, and vinegar. All these substances were tried in succession, everything that he could think of was tried, but without producing the desired effect. Seeing that he had still accomplished nothing, the poor man once more began to take thought with himself. At last he remembered reading in some authors that the matter was so contemptible that it is found on the dunghill, and then he began to operate on his mercury with various kinds of dung. When all these experiments turned out failures, he fell into a deep sleep, and there appeared to him an old man, who elicited from him the cause of his sadness, and bade him use the pure mercury of the sages. When the alchemist awoke he pondered over the words of the old man, and wondered what he could mean by the mercury of the sages. But he could think of no other mercury but that known to the common herd, and went on with his efforts to purge it. For which purpose he used, first, the excrements of animals, then those of children, and at last his own. He also went every day to the place where the old man had appeared to him, in the hope that he might be able to ask him for a more detailed explanation of his meaning. At times, he would pretend to be asleep. And because he thought that the old man might be afraid to come to him in his waking hours, he would swear to him, and say, "Be not afraid to come, old man, I am most certainly asleep. See, my eyes are tightly shut." At length, from always thinking about that old man, he fell into a fever, and in his delirious visions he at last saw a phantom in the guise of that ancient standing at his bedside, and heard him say, "Do not despair, my friend. Your mercury is good, and your substance is good, but it will not obey you. Why do you not charm the mercury, as serpents are charmed?" With this, the old man vanished. But the alchemist arose, with these words still ringing in his ears, "Serpents are charmed," and recollecting that apothecaries ornament their mercury bottles with images of serpents, he took up the vessel with the mercury, and repeated the formula of conjuration, ux, astas, etc., substituting the word mercury for the name of the serpent, "And thou Mercury, most nefarious beast." At these words, the mercury began to laugh, and said to the alchemist, "Why dost thou trouble me, my lord alchemist? Alchemist, oho, do you call me your lord? Now I have touched you home. I have found a bit to bridle you with. Wait a little, and you shall soon sing the tune that I bid you." Then as his courage increased, he cried angrily, "I conjure you by the living God, are you not that Mercury of the sages?" Mercury, pretending to speak in a whimpering and frightened tone of voice, "Master, I am Mercury." Alchemist, "Why would you not obey me then? Why could I not fix you?" Mercury, "Oh, most high and mighty master, I implore you to spare your miserable slave. I did not know that you were such a potent philosopher." Alchemist, "Oh, could you not guess as much from the philosophical way in which I operated on you?" Mercury, "I did so, most high and mighty master, but I wished to hide myself, though now I see that I cannot hide myself from my most potent lord." Alchemist, "Then you know a philosopher when you see him, as you now do, my gallant?" Mercury, "My most high lord, I see, and to my own great cost, that your worship is a high and mighty and most potent philosopher." Alchemist, with a smile of satisfaction, "Now at last I have found what I sought." To the Mercury, in awful tones of thunder, "Now mind that you obey me, else it will be the worse for you." Mercury, "Gladly, master, if I can, for I am very weak." Alchemist, "Oho, do you begin to make excuses already?" Mercury, "No, but I am very languid." Alchemist, "What is the matter with you?" Mercury, "An alchemist is the matter with me." Alchemist, "Are you laughing at me, you false rogue?" Mercury, "Oh, no, no, master, as God shall spare me, I spoke of an alchemist, you are a philosopher." Alchemist, of course, that is quite true. But what did the alchemist do?" Mercury, "Oh master, he has done me 1,000 wrongs. He belabored and mixed me up with all manner of disagreeable and contradictory things, which have stripped me of all my powers, and so I am sick, even to death." Alchemist, "You deserved such treatment, because you would not obey." Mercury, "I never yet disobeyed a philosopher, but I cannot help laughing at fools." Alchemist, "And what is your opinion of me?" Mercury, "O master, your worship is a great man, and mighty philosopher, greater by far than Hermes, both in doctrine and wisdom." Alchemist, "Well, I won't praise myself, but I certainly am a learned man. My wife says so too. She always calls me a profoundly learned philosopher." Mercury, "I quite believe you. For philosophers are men whom too much learning and thought have made mad." Alchemist, "Tell me, what am I to do with you? How am I to make you into the philosopher's stone?" Mercury, "Oh, my master philosopher, that I cannot tell. You are a philosopher, I am the philosopher's humble slave. Whatever he wishes to make me, I become, as far as my nature will allow. Alchemist, this is all very fine, but I repeat that you must tell me how to treat you, and whether you can become the philosopher's stone. Mercury, Mr. Philosopher, if you know, you can make it, and if you don't you can't. From me you cannot learn anything with which you have been unacquainted beforehand. Alchemist, you talk to me as to a simple person. Perhaps you do not know that I have lived at the courts of great princes, and have always been regarded as a very profound philosopher. Mercury, I readily believe you, my master, for the filth of your brilliant experiments still cleaves to me. Alchemist, tell me, then, are you the Mercury of the sages? Mercury, I am Mercury, but you should know best, whether I am the Mercury of you philosophers. Alchemist, tell me only whether you are the true Mercury, or whether there is another. Mercury, I am Mercury, but there is also another. With these words, the Mercury vanished. The alchemist shouts and calls aloud, but there is no answer. At last he is fain to derive some little comfort from the thought that he has had speech of Mercury, and therefore must be very dear to it. With this thought he once more sets himself to sublime, distill, calcine, precipitate, and dissolve the mercury in the most awful manner, and with different sorts of waters. But his efforts turned out failures, and mere waste of time. Then he began to curse Mercury, and to blaspheme nature for creating it. When nature heard this, she called Mercury to her, and asked him what he had done to the alchemist, and why he would not obey him. Mercury humbly protested his innocence. Nature admonished him to obey the sons of knowledge who sought to know her. Mercury promised that he would do so, but added, Mother Nature, who can satisfy fools? Nature smiled, and departed. Mercury, indignant with our alchemist, returned also to his own place. The philosopher presently appeared with some excrements of swine, and was proceeding to ply Mercury therewith, when the latter thus wrathfully accosted him, What do you want of me, you fool? Why did you accuse me? Alchemist, are you he whom I so much desire to see? Mercury, I am, but blind people cannot behold me. Alchemist, I am not blind. Mercury, you are as blind as a newborn puppy. You cannot see yourself, how then should you be able to see me? Alchemist, oh, now you are proud and despise me because I speak humbly. Perhaps you do not know that I have lived at the courts of princes, and have always been called a philosopher. Mercury, the gates of princes stand wide for fools. And it is they that fare sumptuously in the palaces of the great. I quite believe that you have been at court. Alchemist, you are, undoubtedly, the devil, and not a good Mercury, if you speak like that to philosophers. Mercury, now, in confidence, tell me whether you are acquainted with any philosophers. Alchemist, do you ask this of me, when you are aware that I am myself a philosopher? Mercury, smiling behold the philosopher. Well, my philosopher, what do you seek, and what would you have? Alchemist, the philosopher's stone. Mercury, of what substance would you make it? Alchemist, of our mercury. Mercury, oh, my philosopher, then I had better go, for I am not yours. Alchemist, you are none but the devil, and wish to lead me astray. Mercury, well, my philosopher, I think I may return the compliment, you have played the very devil with me. Alchemist, oh, what do I hear? This is most certainly the devil. For I have done everything most scientifically, according to the writings of the sages. Mercury, truly, you are a wonderful operator, your performances exceed your knowledge by as much as they defy the authorities which you have in your books. For they say that substances should be mixed only with substances of a kindred nature. But you have mixed me, against nature, with dung and other foul things, and are indifferent about defiling yourself so long as you can torture me. Alchemist, I do nothing against nature, I only sow the seed in its own proper earth, according to the teaching of the sages. Mercury, you sow me in dung, at the time of the harvest I vanish, and you reap dung. Verily, you are a good husbandman. Alchemist, yet the sages say that their substance is found on the dunghill. Mercury, what they say is true, but you understand only the letter, and not the spirit of their injunctions. Alchemist, now I see that you are perhaps Mercury. But as you will not obey me, I must once more repeat the words of conjuration, ux, ostas, Mercury, laughing. It is of no use, my friend, your words are as profitable as your works. Alchemist, they say true when they call you a wonderful and inconstant and volatile substance. Mercury, you call me inconstant. But to the constant I am also constant, and to the man of fixed resolve, I am fixed. But you, and the likes of you, are continually abandoning one substance for another, and are ever vagabonds in experiment. Alchemist, tell me truly, are you the mercury which, side by side with sulfur and salt, the philosophers describe as the first principle of all things, or must I look for some other substance? Mercury, the fruit, when it falls, lies near the tree that bore it. I am the same that I was, except in the matter of age. In the beginning I was young, and I remained so as long as I was alone. Now, I am old, and yet I am the same as ever. I am only older than I was. Alchemist, I am glad that you are old. For it is a constant and fixed substance that I require, and this also have I invariably sought. Mercury, it is in vain that you come to the old man whom you did not know as a youth. Alchemist, what is this you say? Did I not know you when you were young? Have I not subjected you to all manner of chemical processes, and shall I not continue to do so till I have prepared the philosopher's stone? Mercury, woe is me! What shall I do? I already scent the foul odor of dung. Woe is me! I beseech you, master philosopher, not to ply me with excrements of swine, or the foul smell will drive me hence. And what more do you want of me? Am I not obedient? Do I not mingle with all things that you ask me to amalgamate with? Do I not suffer myself to be sublimated, precipitated, amalgamated, calcined? What more can I do? I have submitted to be scourged and spat upon till my miserable plight might move a heart of stone. I have given you milk, blood, flesh, butter, oil, and water. I have done all that any metal or mineral can do. And yet you have no pity on me. Woe is me! Alchemist, oh ho, it does you no harm, you rascal, you deserve it all richly, for not changing your form, or for resuming the old form after a mere temporary change. Mercury, I do whatsoever you make me do. If you make me a body, I am a body. If you make me powder, I am powder. How can I be more obedient than I am? Alchemist, tell me, then, what you are in your center, and I will not torment you any more. Mercury, I see there is no escape from speaking fundamentally to you. If you will, you may now understand me. With my form which you see you have nothing to do. My center is the fixed heart of all things, immortal and all-pervading. I am a faithful servant to my master, and a faithful friend to my companions, whom I do not desert, and with whom I perish. I am an immortal body. I die when I am slain, but rise to stand before the judgment seat of a discriminating judge. Alchemist, are you then the philosopher's stone? Mercury, my mother is such, and bf her is born artificially some one thing, but my brother who lives in the citadel has in his gift that which the sage desires. Alchemist, tell me, is your age great? Mercury, my mother bore me, yet I am older than my mother. Alchemist, how in all the world am I to understand you, if you answer my questions in dark parables? Tell me in one word, are you that fountain concerning which Bernard, Count of Trevisan, has written? Mercury, I am no fountain, but I am water, and the fountain surrounds me. Alchemist, since you are water, is gold dissolved in you? Mercury, whatever is with me, I love, and to that which is born with me, I impart nourishment. That which is naked I cover with my wings. Alchemist, I see plainly that it is impossible to talk to you. Whatever I ask you, your reply is foreign to the point. If you do not answer my questions better, I will torment you again. Mercury, have pity on me, master, I will gladly tell you all I know. Alchemist, tell me, are you afraid of the fire? Mercury, I myself am fire. Alchemist, why then do you seek to escape from the fire? Mercury, because my spirit loves the spirit of the fire, and accompanies it wherever it goes. Alchemist, where do you go when you ascend with the fire? Mercury, every pilgrim looks anxiously towards his country and his home. When he has returned unto these he reposes, and he always comes back wiser than he left. Alchemist, do you return, then? Mercury, yes, but in another form. Alchemist, I do not understand what you mean, nor yet about the fire. Mercury, if anyone knows the fire of my heart, he has seen that fire, proper heat, is my food. And the longer the spirit of my heart feeds on fire, the fatter will it be, its death is afterwards the life of all things belonging to my kingdom. Alchemist, are you great? Mercury, my body, as you must know, can become one drop out of 1,000 drops, and, though I am always one, you can divide my body as often as you like. But my spirit, or heart, always produces many thousands of parts out of one part. Alchemist, how is this to be brought about? After what manner should my operation be performed on you? Mercury, I am fire within, fire is my food and my life, but the life of fire is air, for without air fire is extinguished. Fire is stronger than air, hence I know not any repose, and crude air can neither coagulate nor restrain me. Add air to air, so that both become one in even balance, combine them with fire, and leave the whole to time. Alchemist, what will happen then? Mercury, everything superfluous will be removed. The residue you burn in fire, place in water, cook, and when it is cooked you give as a medicine, and have no fear. Alchemist, you do not answer my questions. Wife, bring the excrements of swine, and we will see whether we can get the better of his stubbornness. In his utmost extremity, Mercury called in the help of nature, amidst much lamentation and mourning over these threats of our admirable alchemist. He impeaches the thankless operator. Nature trusts her son, Mercury, whom she knows to be true and faithful, and comes full of wrath to the alchemist, calling him imperiously before her. Alchemist, who calls me? Nature, what are you doing to my son, arch-fool that you are? Why do you torment him? He is willing to give you every blessing, if you can understand him. Alchemist, who dares to rebuke so great a philosopher, and a man withal so excellent as I am? Nature, O fool, and of all men most insensate, I know and love all philosophers, and am loved of them. I take pleasure in aiding their efforts, and they help me to do that which I am unable to accomplish. But you so-called alchemists are constantly offending me, and systematically doing despite to me, and this is the reason why all your efforts are doomed to failure. Alchemist, it is not true. I, too, am a philosopher, and understand scientific methods of procedure. I have lived with several princes, and with more than one philosopher, as my wife can testify. Moreover, I possess at this very moment a manuscript which has lain hidden for some centuries in a certain wall. I know very well that I am almost at the end of my labors, and am on the point of composing the Philosopher's Stone. For it was revealed to me a few days ago in a dream. I have had a great many dreams, nor do I ever dream anything untrue, my wife knows it. Nature, it is with you as with a great many of your fellows, at first they know everything, but in the end their knowledge turns to ignorance. Alchemist, if you are truly nature, it is you who serve for the operation of the work. Nature that is true, but it is performed only by those who know me, and such do riot torment my children, nor do they hinder my working. Rather they clear away the impediments, that I may the sooner reach the goal. Alchemist, that is exactly what I do. Nature, no, you do nothing but cross me, and deal with my children against my will. Where you should revive, you kill, where you should fix, you sublime, where you should calcine, you distill. And thus my obedient son Mercury you torment in the most fearful manner. Alchemist, then I will in future deal with him gently, and subject him only to gradual coction. Nature, that is well, if you possess understanding. Otherwise, you will ruin only yourself and your possessions. If you act in opposition to my commands, you hurt yourself more than him. Alchemist, but how am I to make the philosopher's stone? Nature, that question does not justify your ill treatment of my son. Know that I have many sons and daughters, and that I am swift to succor those who seek me, provided they are worthy. Alchemist, but who is that Mercury? Nature, know that I have only one such son, he is one of 7, and the first among them, and though he is now all things, he was at first only one. In him are the 4 elements, yet he is not an element. He is a spirit, yet he has a body. A man, yet he performs a woman's part, a boy, yet he bears a man's weapons, a beast, and yet he has the wings of a bird. He is poison, yet he cures leprosy, life, yet he kills all things, a king, but another occupies his throne. He flees from the fire, yet fire is taken from him, he is water, but does not wet the hands, he is earth, and yet he is sown, he is air, and lives by water. Alchemist, now I see that I know nothing, only I must not say so. For I should lose the good opinion of my neighbors, and they would no longer entrust me with money for my experiments. I must therefore go on saying that I know everything, for there are many that expect me to do great things for them. Nature, but if you go on in that way, your neighbors will at last find you out, and demand their money back. Alchemist, I must amuse them with promises, as long as I can. Nature, and what then? Alchemist, I will try different experiments. And if they fail, I will go to some other country, and live the same life there. Nature, and then? Alchemist, ha, ha, ha. There are many countries, and many greedy persons who will suffer themselves to be gulled by my promises of mountains of gold. Thus day will follow day, and in the meantime the king or the donkey will die, or I myself. Nature, such philosophers are only fit for the gallows. Be off, and take with you my most grievous curse. The best thing that you can do, is to give yourself up to the king's officers, who will quickly put an end to you and your philosophy.